Okay, we spent almost the last hour just recapping, talking about the future. None of it fit in, but it was sort of a break for me not to be talking about my life in the business or the life before, and it sort of recapped the front and started into another era. And of course, we can't show you the thousands of pictures, the miles of videotapes, the years at Disney, the parties, the things that happen. I mean, it's impossible, as I said the other day. How do you take 76 years and put it into 10 hours or 11 hours or 100 hours? No, 10, 11 hours. Tricia will fall asleep. So now we're in 71. And we had just gone through, so Disney opened and they're fine, they're doing well without me. We were there, by the way, the opening Christmas. We figured we'd go for 3 days and we stayed for 10 or 12. And that really became our destination in life for vacations. We went other places, but we'll go to that later. We're back at business. We had just gone public. We went bankrupt. We were Chapter 11. We were in the building 1 that we're in now. We probably by now I know we bought building 2, which is no longer there. We bought building 3. And we're now have to think of the future. We had enough money to go on. We had orders, we had customers, and we had the start of a pen factory. And we had the little inkling start of a printing plant. I think we had one press that we bought used for $1,000 or something. And we had an art department. So we're moving ahead. Now 71, 72, 73. Well, we have to go to court every month to tell the judge we're not losing money. And it goes on for about a year, and then you make a settlement with the creditors of 20 cents on a dollar and payable over 5 years. But now what are you going to do? You're a jobber. You're in the mail order business. So you continue in the mail order business, but not with 6 million pieces of mail. You may be mailing 500,000 or doing less. But we say, wait a minute. What are we going to do for really having a business? We said, well, we're in the political business in a small way. We have a red, white, and blue catalog. Mitchell says, Mitchell is who knows how old at that point, 16, 17. Why don't you do a color catalog? In 1971, he says. Very expensive in those days. There were no computers to put them together. It was all film and handwork and film. It would take, 3 days to do a page. Now they do a page in 3 hours or 2 hours. We decide to do a catalog in color. And we bring in Al Sokol, we bring Gus in, and we open a whole department. And boy, we're going crazy. But it really started us back into a real business, political. Votes Unlimited. It was there, but it was a very small part of our company. The Ross mail order pen business was the big part of the company. And here we are now, starting in the Votes Unlimited business. And we're buying our bumper strips and posters from Gill Studios. We're buying our buttons from Aura Badge. We're buying our pens from who knows where. Well, we're making our pens. And when I went on television back in 1969 on the Wall Street something or other, they sort of pointed out that Mr. Ross doesn't just go into business. He first waits and gets a volume of business, let's say for buttons, and then he makes buttons. He doesn't make buttons and then say go out and sell it. So here we were with a volume of screen business, and we didn't like Gill Studios and they didn't like us. So we were on a prepaid basis because of and we said, let's go into the screen business. And boy, did we go into the screen business. We only became their major competitor because we would then decide we'll sell new pack jobbers where they were selling. So there's always repercussions. They thought, well, they'll do what they want because they, cash with order. They never thought for a moment that I would open a screen business to compete with them. So we spent probably 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, those years, opening a factory. We sold a lot of buttons, or a badge wasn't giving quick delivery. We went into the button business. We expanded our pen business. We started to sell new pack. We were handling 14,000 new pack orders a year because we didn't have enough business in our other divisions. We didn't have a fire business then. And we were doing very well. We were doing nicely. We were getting a high price for our merchandise. We seemed to have had the money to buy the equipment, set up, hire people, put out the catalogs, sell the jobbers, go to some shows, and the years were turning out very nicely. Let's put, Allison was in high school. In 1970, she was 10, 11 years old. Mitchell was off in some kind of prep school or something. Eileen was probably 4 years old or something in that area. Or just being born. I don't know the dates. So we had this business, and we would come to Florida. We would take Eileen and her girlfriend to Disney. We would take your mother and her friends to Canada, to Montreal, Quebec. We would take your mother and her friends to Florida, to Disney World, to South Florida. We were living a very normal life, running a company, but something had happened in 1972 or 3. My junior partner, Erwin Brotman, who owned 10% of the company, he left his wife, my sister-in-law, Aunt Clara, and went with Ruth Johnson, whatever her name was, and they moved to Florida. And Aunt Clara moved to Florida. So I was really pretty much running the business myself because he was running it with me from the time we were up at Main Street with Ernie. Oh, that was a funny story with Ernie. As a lesson, Uncle Erwin came to work. He went to college. He was managing a bowling alley. He came to work. He told Ernie to sweep the floor. Ernie said, no, you sweep the floor because I'm here longer than you. So you see, so in the mind of this boy who couldn't read or write, the college graduate, because he came in after him, was going to sweep the floor. Well, that was the end of Ernie. I think Uncle Erwin fired him. But here we were in this big building, Building 1, nice offices. We worked hard. Uncle Erwin and I washed the floors on Friday night. We didn't bring cleaning people in the early days. We did the work. But we were building, and we were going on vacations. And your grandma and I, we went to Barbados several times. We went to Las Vegas. I took your mother and the kids to Atlanta, took grandma to Chicago. So things were nice. And then something happened in the family. Maybe someone got sick or something, and we left, came to Florida. But I can't jump from 70 to 77 when I took the apartment in Florida, which is like 6-7 years, in 3 minutes. And the reason I can't, but probably I could, is that there was nothing really happening. We were in business. We had money after the 11. We had business. We had learned a great lesson. You can't give your merchandise away. I had a sign on the wall in my office, they will pay. Not angrily. We raised our prices to a very high price. We were the only ones in the business. We were giving quick service. We gave merchandise that looked better than Gill's. We had better typesetting. We had everything. They were 3 weeks delivery. We were 10 days. We were setting standards in the industry. And but how did I get into these businesses? how did the cab driver or the fabric salesman or the salesman of Java, how do you get into the printing business? How do you get into the screening business? How do you get into the pen business? How do you do these things? I didn't. When I wanted to get in the screening business, I hired a man from Texas who lived in New York, forget his name. He was running a screen department in a shirt factory.
Oh my goodness.
The door flew open from the wind. So we're going to close the door. We thought someone was coming in. So if we all sounded alarm, there's no alarm. Very strange phenomenon. And so we hired this guy, brought him up from Texas, moved his stuff with his wife. Now his wife was this, and she moved up to where she lived upstate. And he opened the screen business. And he brought a man with him to do artwork called Kochek, who went to college with him. They went to Ringley School of Art. When we wanted to go in the button business, there was a guy by the name of Chuck Blazer who had a big button company in Chicago, New York, went bankrupt. We gave him $5,000 to teach us something. He didn't teach us much. He took the $5,000. I saw him once. But I learned enough from him to get into the button business. When I wanted to go in the pen business, we had Howard Strauss, who came out of a pen company in New York, working with us, for us. When we wanted to get big in the die cutting business, we found a man. We either had a job and found a man to do it, or looked around and said, oh, that guy working for us knows to do this, let's go in that direction. So Grandpa doesn't know how to print, Grandpa doesn't know how to screen, Grandpa doesn't know how to make buttons, but he specified all the equipment, he set up all the systems, but there was somebody there that had the experience. I wanted an art department, I got Al Sokol. He came out of Channel Master. He set up my art department. And that's one of the secrets of running a business. You don't have to know how to do it. You just have to be the orchestra leader, know to hire the trombone player, and get the best drummer, and make sure that they're all playing in harmony, and that's it. And Grandpa built a screen business, a button business, a fan business, a litho business, pens, makes 400 products, prints, and doesn't know how to do it. But he started out as a printer when he out of high school. The whole key is two keys. Two keys. One key is creativity, the ability to take something that doesn't exist and make it into something. The same thing with decorating a house, the same thing with decorating a wall, the same thing at teaching at Disney. Something that doesn't exist, seeing it in your mind, making it exist. Now, how you make it exist doesn't have to be your hands. All these brochures and books are my mind, but Gus or other people do the work, the coloring, the this. I may tell them what to color it, but it's their hands and my mind. So as you go through life, no matter what business you're in, you have to be creative, and you must be able to pick the people who will help you create. Walt Disney, and by the way, that was when I get to Walt Disney. Not only was I teaching at Disney, I was learning at Disney, because Walt Disney was a genius. And this concept, he wasn't an artist, but he was an art director. He wasn't a musician, but he was a musician director. That he could tell everyone what to do, but he couldn't do it. And there were things I was learning up there that I applied to my business. Like Walt Disney built an animatronics. The show goes on for 20 years, but he doesn't pay any people. Got that same character running back and forth. What can I do? Well, I decided to make characters. Fireman Gus, later on in life. But Santa Claus, I said, wait a minute. Who's bigger than Mickey Mouse? Santa Claus. So I came up with Santa books. Same books are selling for 30 years, over and over and over. So I didn't have to go to Looney Tunes for a character. I used Santa Claus. So I was learning up there how to recycle and make products. You see, if you're in the dress business, you got to design a dress twice a year. The dress you designed 3 months ago is meaningless. In a car business, you got to redesign your cars. But what I came up with was, let me make products that go on and on and on for years. And catalog pages. We just abandoned a catalog page in our political book that was designed in 1972. The pencil page ran for 32 years. The emery board page ran for 32 years. Imagine a catalog page lasting 32 years with no changes except prices. So what we were doing, we were establishing stuff that could carry on, even to other generations, because our 7 Christmas books probably will be good for another 30 years. Okay, so where was I? I don't know where I was. I'm back. So we were back in the years 71, 72, 73. We're opening the screen business. We're traveling. We're going on vacations. Pretty much normal life. Of course, everything's a problem. You hire a man from Texas. I think he turned out to be a drinker. He was at the bar every night. Well, we learned enough and we fired him. We had this building. Upstairs, we had pens on one half of the floor. We had buttons on the other half. The girls were fighting. Katie Knapp was fighting with Grace. We had to almost put a wall up. But we had 120 people working there. We had 15 button machines, knocking out buttons all day. Today we have one button machine, but we have other products. You see, that was another thing which I was teaching your mother. Don't ever count on one business. Because if the one business is bad, you're out of business. So we had the New Pack business. We had the political business. We had the Ross mail order business. We had products that were different. We had screen products. We had litho products to a point, at that point. We had buttons. We had pens. There was a lot of diversity. When one got bad or one season ended, we went to candy. We sold Christmas candy. That helped us after the political season. There were still seasons and peaks, but it was a matter of, and that's, as I told you, the columns, the wood your mother showed you. Don't build a life on one thing, it falls down and you're dead. You're forgotten, you're gone. You build a life on family. You build a life on religion to some extent. You build a life on business, on this, on social. And if one thing falls, you got 4 other things to hold you up until you rebuild that part of life. And that's the emblem of our corporation. It's these posts holding up this building, and it says Ross. And I taught your mother when she was very young. We had wooden columns in the house, and we teach them. And there's other things we taught them, which you're going to have to learn. And I think you have learned. We used to have a cookie jar, a candy jar. She's smiling. And we said, if you put your hand in and try to grab out a fist, you can't get past and you get nothing. But if you put your 2 fingers in, take out a piece of candy, eat it, then go back again, then you can eat candy. Don't be a pig. Don't try to grab more than you can handle. You get nothing. And that basically, from the point of 1970, was the philosophy of our business. Build many parts of the business, and don't try to be too big. Just make it nice and easy. And of course, it worked. It worked until the modern time of computers and a different world in 2001. So we had these 41 years or whatever it is, tough ones, easy ones, but all the time learning. Don't try to grab, don't try to be too big. We had a guy in the industry, Halo, came in, bought out, took out, merged, $500 million and went bankrupt. Stuck everybody, now they're trying to resurrect it today. We had a lot of companies that come, even the giant companies in America, the Kmarts or this. Your grandfather saw giant companies close, W.T. Grant, which was like Kmart, gone. So many businesses in 44 years failed, giant businesses, and the good ones stayed. Kellogg's Cornflakes stayed. But I said this at the beginning, 9 out of 10 businesses don't go past 10 years. 50% close in the first 5 years. 30-40% close after 2 years. If you can make 50 years in business, it's good. If you can make 50 years in business, in the mail order business, I mean, Spiegel went out of the mail order business, they went broke. Montgomery Ward, which was a mail order company, closed down. I don't know if they filed bankruptcy, but they had to close down all their stores and their mail order. Sears Roebuck was on the verge of big trouble. They had to learn that it was a different time, different world. You have to change. The giants of the past no longer the giants of the past. Walmart became the giant. And you never could stop. You never could stop learning. And you can never dream past your capacity. It's very important. I used to tell your mother, wake up every day and figure out how stupid you are, not how smart you are. Because we're not smart. Smart people fail. Stupid people keep learning. The people who think they're smart do things that are stupid. The stupid person thinks 100 times before they do something. So let's be stupid. Let's not think we're smart. And that's something that's a strange philosophy to your grandfather. Oh, look how smart we are. Well, if you think you're smart, you're going to do stupid things. Because look how smart I am, I can do anything. But gee, I'm not too smart. I better think it out, I better think it out, I better think it out, better go slowly. And you also learn, for every action, there's a reaction. You do something to a competitor, looks good, but you may be causing yourself more harm than good. You may put him out of the business you put him out of, he may go into another business that competes with you more than the one that you did. You always have to be careful that the reaction may not be what you think it is. We have a case later on when I was in Florida. Princess Advertising, I told you, she came to work for me, my job, advertise Monticello. And a letter went out when I was in Florida to all of the button suppliers. It's an anonymous letter. And the letter said, tell all your customers, we were big jobbers, we were selling a lot of jobbers, that Ross Industries is not just Newpack. They have Votes Unlimited and this, and Allison has taken over Florida and all this information. And we didn't know who sent the letter out. We didn't know who sent the letter out. And the only reason we knew there was a letter, one of the letters got mangled with no address. So the post office put it back into an envelope, and the only name in there was Ross Industries. So they sent it to me. And it was mailed from the middle of Massachusetts. And I said, maybe it was mailed by this one or that one. I said, but gee, it looks like Jean Rosenheck's work. But what is she doing in Massachusetts? Well, anyway, about 5, 6, 7 years later, I was talking to Jean. She said, you know, Mr. Ross, I was sick. I said, you were sick? She says, yes. I was very sick. I had to go to Boston every month to the hospital. Well, the road that this town was on was the road between Albany and Boston. And for us to get to Boston from Sullivan County, you go up to Albany and go across the state road. So now I know who did it, because on the way to the hospital, she figured I'd never know if she mailed it. I never spoke to her again. In fact, I told her insurance people what she did and let her know that I know. It's been 10, 15 years since I spoke to her. But you see, you always get caught. Don't let me finish. So maybe it did affect our button business. We didn't care, because we start turning more and more to political. We turn to fire, we turned to law enforcement, and we built a giant business better than the button business. Now, she thought she'd put us out of business. You don't put people out of business. People put themselves out of business. But she created for us another avenue. So every time, so when we told Gil, Gil wrote us a letter, this nasty, they didn't think we'd open a factory. So, and we had a guy, when we were selling coloring books to the 2 fire jobbers, or 3 in the country, we had a guy here in Tampa, Hines, not a nice guy at all. His name wasn't Hines, he bought the company. And he said, you make me a book personalized or I'll make my own book. Well, anyway, I found out he was copying our book. I sued him, I won. I went to the fire business, and we diminished his business by 80% because he threatened me. He figured, well, what are they going to do? I'll threaten them. I'll go make my own book. He not only made his own book, his business was diminished, and we caused him some major trouble because we were suing him, and we won. It cost him maybe $30,000, $40,000. So you always remember in life, for every action, there's a reaction, and the reaction may not be what you think it is. So you can never fully think you're smart enough to do this, this, and this, and that you know the reaction. So what are we doing in these years? We're learning, don't put your hand in the cookie jar. Build many structures. For every action, there's a reaction. You fire an employee, maybe they'll go in business against you. Maybe they'll call up the competitors and tell them what you're doing if you aggravate an employee enough. You watch what you do. So the answer is, we got those years, we're traveling, we're going to Vegas, we're going to Barbados, we're friends with Dr. Schwab, Dr. Schwartz, Archie. Your mother's growing up in Liberty, she's not too happy, I don't know. She's happy, she's not happy. She said to me yesterday she never felt poor. I said, well, we weren't poor. The year that we had the big trouble, we had the big bar mitzvah. We expanded the house. I think back then, I have somewhere in my mind, we were making $87,000 a year in 1969. Well, that was 35 years ago. It wasn't all the money in the world, but the minimum wage was $1 an hour. So employees were making, let's say Martha may have been making, if it was still $1 an hour, she was making $2,000 a year, and we were making $87,000 a year. So was it $2,000 a year? Well, figure it out. $1 an hour, 40 hours a week, $40, $2,000 a year. And if we were making $87,000, it was more than the doctors were making. So we weren't poor, and we never were poor. And it's important. There was another factor. The company always came first. In other words, if things were not good in the company for a month, 2, 3, or 6 months, we cut our salaries. We didn't take ours and then we always took care of the company first. We always took care of our employees first. We came second. And of course paid off because we're there for a long time. So there's learning things in business, and it's the same thing if you're a psychologist. You can't spend $200,000 a year to live if you're only making $100,000 at your job, because you're not going to last very long. So you always have to tailor, and look who I'm talking to, Miss Moneybags and Miss Prudence. I think she has the first penny she ever made and bends it, you know. If she had the dollar with the hole, she would have melted it down and sold the silver. Now, she's a good girl, and it's good to be frugal. It really is. And Grandpa never was, but Grandpa had the ability to make money. Now, it was very strange. Think about it. He's 76 years old, never got fired from a job, had 42 jobs, 44 years in business, had good times and bad times, but always made money. Think about it. I was able to support a family, some relatives, take care of my children, my grandchildren, emergencies, my employees for 44 years. And I don't say that so you can, say, oh, I worship Grandpa, he's a genius. No, it was a dedication to do that. If I had to take care of somebody, I didn't go to Vegas. I always took care of my obligations first, and then took care of. So if I had $1 million a year to live on, I shared it. And if I bought a lot of things, and a lot of these things, of course, were given to me by Disney people, other people, but I didn't buy it and then say to someone, don't eat. It was totally superfluous money. So everything in life was taken care of. And if she's not here, but you're listening to this for 50 years from now, Tricia had probably the nicest bat mitzvah in the world. And Tricia had the best 10-year-old birthday party in the world. And Tricia had the best education in life in the world. Because that's what Tricia, as I said to Stephen the other day, what Tricia earned. Grandpa didn't give it to her. She was good, she didn't go on drugs, she never will, I'll break her wrong. And she doesn't smoke, and she doesn't follow the trends of, what's her name, belly button, what's her name, the singer, Britney Spears, like all the kids, and she's got a brain in her head.
This is about you, not me.
No, it is about you, because what I was doing in these years was mentoring you. I was teaching you. I didn't sit you down and say, let's have a lesson, but the experiences of Disney, of your life, of the way you lived, the way you came out of an environment which was established by me and your mother as a way of life that we figured and thought would be the best way of life with the least problems. I grew up and I didn't do things because I said, well, maybe it would hurt my mother. Like one summer I was at not Disney, as a child, 18, 19, in the summer. And I took a room in the beach in Rockaway. And at the end of the summer she says, you were using drugs. I said, what are you talking about, Mom? She said, well, you didn't get a sunburn. I said, and I wasn't using drugs, but because I didn't get a sunburn, I was going out on dates all the afternoon and night, so I didn't get a sunburn. So you see, parents are strange. They judge things, and anyway, because I knew my mother had gone through an awful lot. My mother never went to sleep until my sister came home from a date. I don't care if it was 1, 2 in the morning, my mother sat there. That was my mother. My mother was there when I came home from school, because mothers didn't work in those days. I never came home from school that my mother wasn't there. Never came home from school that my mother wasn't there while my father was alive. And she, because my brothers were in the service, she lived through those war years, which were hell. And then they never had a lot of money. Well, why did I want to do something to hurt my mother? It wasn't that I was such a good person. It's just that if it meant, think of your mother. You don't want to do more. Life wasn't wonderful. There was no vacations. There was no nothing. They woke up in the morning, they cooked. There was no canned goods. They shopped. And they sat on a bench and talked, and they fought with their sisters once in a while. But you didn't want to add any burdens to the life of somebody who was working to keep you eating. So it was, even back then, was a family situation. So basically, we're back into the 70s until I came to Florida, and basically 77, I took my apartment in Florida. It was a year of building. We built you can sit down, Mrs. R. It was a year of building the factory, building staff, going and taking care of your mother and some family illnesses, maybe helping my sister a little. I don't know what that era was. My mother, and we were going through, I would say, nice times. We'd come to Florida. We'd stay at the Fontainebleau. We would go to Disney. We would stay at the Contemporary or the Polynesian. Now, in this time, I met a man, Bojangles. I met a man? No, it's another song. Okay, I get lost. I met Uncle Irwin, left, and he opened a print shop. I signed for his, he had no credit. I signed for his equipment so he could get into business. There was a man who worked at a radio station. He said he owned it, but I think he was a liar. And Uncle Irwin was getting advertising for barter. He would give the guy printing, or the guy would send other people to print, and he would advertise Irwin. His name was Bud Paxson, Paxon. And Bud was I don't know, his wife left him or was going to leave him. I met her. She was pretty, blonde, 2 children. And Bud, I think, was drinking and running, and he was real jerko. And Bud needed bumper strips. Bud needed bumper strips. He had a gas station that you put bumper strips on the car, and if you saw the bumper strip on certain days, you got a gas for less or a wash. He was always running promotions. Everything was on barter. No money. All his commercials. He was living at a hotel on barter. He would put us up on it. So anyway, Bud needed $10,000 worth of bumper strips. I said, fine, I'll give it to you. I probably gave him $5,000 for $10,000, and he owed me $10,000. So we were coming to Florida a lot. Bud would make a reservation for us at the hotel. The hotel would take advertising, and we'd stay at the hotel. We'd go to a restaurant. We would send people, employees to Florida. We didn't pay for it. But Bud got a little out of hand. Bud was, he started to come up with schemes. Bud, and the reason I'm doing this, Bud Paxson today, of course, is Bud Paxson. He owns the Pax Network, which is one of the big networks he owns more television stations than anyone else in the world. He opened the Home Shopping Network, made $500 million. But Grandpa sent him away. I think he called me to go partners, but he sent him away. No, I'm not sorry, because he had deals. He was going to put me on the QE2. He was going to fly me on the Concorde. He had everything in the world. I was the rich guy, and he wanted to barter. And finally, he had a crooked deal where we were going to go to Canada. He was going to make $5,000-$10,000. We were going to buy insurance. He was going to get a commission. We would get our money back. It's illegal. And I said no. And finally, I said, Bud, really, leave me alone. Bud's boss, which I think was his boss, fired him because there was no money in the station. It was all Bud living on barter. Everywhere he went, his clothes were barter. He lived. Bud moved to Tampa, and he called me from Tampa, and he had this deal and this and that, and a diamond ring, who knows what. And I said, Bud, really, I've got a different structure now. And well, Bud had an idea. If he couldn't sell something on radio, he was going to he goes into a hardware store, takes their toasters, and on the radio he sells it. And he makes a profit on what he sells rather than getting paid for the commercial. But he said, if it works on radio, why not on television? So he finds this guy with money, which he thought probably was me, and they open the Home Shopping Network. And they become the hottest stock on the stock market that year. And Bud makes $500 million, and he sells out his shares. It's owned by Barry Diller now, an old friend of Michael Eisner. Barry's Diller, is a big man. He owns that and Ditech and all these other things on the cable, which we'll go into later. And Bud is not happy. So he moves out of Tampa and he decides he's going back in the radio business. So he buys 100 radio stations. sells it out, he goes into the sign business. I have nothing to do with him anymore, I'm just following. As a matter of fact, when I was in Orlando, on the color section, it had his picture on the front page, in color, in the magazine section, it said genius. And I said, a genius is a moron who succeeds, because he was not a genius. He really wasn't. And he's proven it now because he's lost most of his $500 million. He never went back with his wife. Back then, when I knew him, before he went, he became a born-again Christian. And he was going to Orlando or something to be mentored in the Christian, I don't know what, like the Farwell, but you have to go for training. So he became a born-again Christian. I think he stopped drinking. And so right now, he bought a $6 or $8 million home in Palm Beach. And he has a big yacht. But his stock is $3 a share. It used to be $10 or $22 a share. And his radio stations are doing very poorly. CBS owns a big portion of that business. And I don't know what Bud has. It really left. But he would have been probably better off taking his $500 million and retiring. He bought a giant airplane. I'm talking about a commercial airline. You know, one big airplane, like a 747. He thought the $500 million was all the money in the world. And he had a big yacht. I saw in the magazine, Bud and his new wife on the yacht on the French Riviera. Well, $500 million goes pretty quickly, because I noticed he's selling out shares of his stock like a few weeks ago for $5 million worth or something to live on. I mean, if you have your yacht still and your big mansion, how are you paying for it? So Bud is Bud. But what I'm trying to tell you, as I said before, as we go through life, your grandfather, the old man, Mr. Ross, has come across and worked with some people that's very, for example, Alan Gary, the 140th richest man in America. I don't say he's my friend. I don't have any friends. You know why I don't have any friends? You heard the story 100 times. And I have to tell it here. Everyone became my friend. Everywhere you go, I'm Mr. Ross's friend. If someone moves into Eagle Trace and they live 9 houses down, I live across the street from Mr. Ross. Or I live by the Dowers. It's either I live across the street by the Dowers or I live by Mr. Ross. The Dowers have a $6 million house across the street. So, and the same thing at Disney. And I'll get to the whole story in a minute. The same thing at Disney. Everyone is a friend of Mr. Ross. Everybody. As a matter of fact, I once said to George Kalogridis, who was vice president of Epcot and the guy who was running California, I said, George, everyone's your friend. Everyone loves you. And he said, you know, don't believe all these people who say they're my friend, because if everyone who told me that they were a friend of David Ross, you'd have 100,000 friends. And it's true. If you're a garbage collector, no one runs around town and says, I'm your friend. But if you have $100 million, which I don't, everyone's your friend. And we know that at Disney, that everyone's my friend, which I love. And it's wonderful, because I am that friend. But the answer is, so let me finish. Where this started, I have no friends. We came to Florida, and we were in a restaurant on 441. No, we're on a restaurant on University over here. And a man sitting at the table next to us. We were living in Coral Springs at the time, so it was within the last 15 years, 18 years. He said he's going to a movie in Coral Springs, and we were in Tamarack, up next to it, Sunrise. And I said, well, be careful, because we have 2 movie theaters. He says, where are you from? I said, I'm from Liberty. And he looked at me and said, I have a friend in Liberty. Friend in Liberty. And I said, who? He said, David Ross. And I said to myself, oh my God, what has this guy got himself into? And I didn't want to jump up and say I'm David Ross. I said, David Ross, what does he do? He said, well, he has a pen business and this and that. And I said, well, am I going to embarrass this guy? Yes. So I said, I'm David Ross. Well, his face fell down to the floor. I said, well, how do you get to be my friend? And he told me back in 1970, some guy came to my office we were also in the office supply business for a while, selling desks and stuff through the mail. And, I can tell you stories about things but anyway. And he sort of came in with this guy. The guy's name was Fingerhut. And not him, but the guy I met with. They wanted me to go into business with them or something. And he drove up with him from New York. I didn't even know he came into my office. I thought he was in the waiting room. And that was my friend. And I realized then that a friend is an imaginary thing, like a rabbit. You know, you can go through life thinking you're walking around with a rabbit as a friend, or Mr. Dave Ross as a friend, or I could call, Mr. Kennedy my friend, because I met Kennedy longer than this guy met me. And Bud Paxson's not my friend, but I spend years with Bud Paxson, but he's not my friend. So that ended that. And then came one more story when I moved into the Oaks. A very similar story. Man knocked on my door. You got to remember, and this is hard for you people to understand, the name Dave Ross brings on two things: fear and laughter. No. People, like one guy says to me, I followed your career. Everything that happens, I follow. I guess they follow Alan Gary. I may follow Michael Eisen's career on the web, but there are people who follow my career for some reason. At Disney, I mean, I've had people sitting under my window at the hotel, just gazing up, hoping I'd wave to them like the Pope. Yes, I have people stop me in parking lots. I'm only a busboy, and I can't talk to you in the restaurant, but I'd like to shake your hand. I had people knocking on my door at the Wilderness Lodge. I'd like to see him. What is it? Well, I'm the head housekeeper, but I don't have a chance. I'd like to just see him. And you sit there in your bathrobe like the old Pope. And you say, yes, bless you, young lady. Why they wanted to say, I don't know. Maybe they want to go out and say they're my friend. You know, and rather than say I knocked on his door and asked to see him, I'm Mr. Ross's friend. Why? I guess it brings something to their life. And I don't mind it. If it brings something to their life, then let them have it. It doesn't cost me anything. So let me finish with the story. So there's a knock on my door, and a man says, hello. No, I'm sorry, I'm sitting on the patio. He walked around to the patio. Hello. He said, you remember me? I said, no. And Tricia would say, well, Tricia knows. See, hundreds of people come over to me and say, hello, Mr. Ross. And I say, hi, how are you? How's the folks? And she says, Grandpa, you don't know who that is. I said, no, but why am I going to insult them and say, I don't know who you are? You know, everyone has folks. So how's your folks? Anyway, let me finish. So the guy comes on the patio. Hello, Mr. Ross. Yes. You remember me? I said, no. I mean, this guy's on my patio. I can't say I know you. He says, I sold you a light fixture in Paramus, New Jersey in 1969. I said, okay, I remember buying the light fixture. And I went to hang it in your house in Liberty. I said, I remember you hung it in my house in Liberty, the big light fixtures. He says, and now I remember, when he was coming up, he says, I had a friend in Parksville, which was 4 miles north of Liberty, and he told me the guy's name, and I didn't know who he was talking about. So now he comes and hangs a light fixture, but he tells me that his friend in Parksville is a good friend of mine, because his friend is always talking about me. I don't know who he's talking about. Schleimy, who knows who. So anyway, what am I going to do? Make his friend in Parksville look like a moron? I don't even know who he's talking about. But I guess a friend in Parksville is a good friend of mine. So anyway, we say hello and this and that. He tells me Schleimy's doing fine. Bum, bum, bum. And I'm very happy. And I say goodbye. 2 years later, life goes on. Knock on my front door. Yes. And it's the man from the light fixture store. Come on in. Yes? Sit down, Mr. Ross, I got bad news for you. I said, what is it? He said, Shlomi died. Well, I didn't know if I should break into tears or what. I didn't know who Shlomi was 10 years before, and I didn't know who Shlomi was then. But Shlomi died, and he thought I'd fall apart. And it was strange. I didn't go to the funeral, I didn't do a eulogy, and to this day, I don't know who he's talking about. But you see, that is life. So as you go through life 50 years from now, and someone says they know Mr. Ross, say, oh yes, how's the folks? And I'm getting very dry, but that's what life was in those years. I was becoming a legend. The employees would go to a show, and I would never go, and people would come and say, you know, Mr. Ross is a legend. Oh, yes. In Chicago, they have trade shows, and they'd go and say, I know Mr. Ross. In New York State, I wasn't a legend in the whole country, I was a legend in New York State. I don't know what the difference is between this and that and those, but I was a legend in New York State. And I told you the other day, so it's like the man who comes, now they have a nice business, they have a 35 million or 40 million, the Stouts Company. They used to be with Gil, they left, they were at a show, and they called me up after the show, the trade show, and they said, someone came to my booth, Ron Ball, and they said, we know Dave Ross, and we spoke to him the other day. And Ron looked at us like, why would he didn't say it, but the expression was, what would Mr. Ross have to do with you people? Like, you know, you're just starting. Well, of course, I was always friendly with everybody. But the concept of, well, perfect example, which I'm going through these years, my neighbor across the street, he's our state senator. And he asked my lawyer, Harvey, I'd like to meet Mr. Ross. And Harvey said, Mr. Ross doesn't meet anybody. So we're here 12 years in his house, and he stopped his car outside and said hello one day when I went to get the mail. But these people think because they are, like the neighbor next to him said, let's go to dinner one night. And my chauffeur says, you're not going to dinner with him, you're going to dinner with Tricia. No, he didn't say it, but I go to dinner with my family. I don't go to dinner unless I'm in Orlando. So everybody has their own view of Mr. Ross, or lack of view. It's like Bobby, who runs Pizza Time. He came to me and said, I jogged by your house. He lives on the other side of Eagle Trace. I jogged by your house, I think he said, with this dentist, and he wants to see your house. Can I bring him in? I said, no. I don't run a tour bus. You see, because it's Mr. Ross's house, they'd like to see it. So basically, I've gone through life as somebody who exists and doesn't exist, a legend and not a legend. Tricia thought I owned Disney, but Michael Eisner knows I don't own Disney. See, there are people who are smarter than Tricia who know I don't own Disney. And we've gone through life with this wonderful, perfect example, and we haven't got to the business yet. I went into Emeralds. Well, first of all, when Wolfgang came to Orlando and heard that I was eating in his restaurant, this guy got more excited than a kid watching Dumpty Doo-Doos. And they said, Wolfgang's coming tomorrow night, and he's going to cook for you, and this and that. And we get there to Wolfgang's, and he's waiting downstairs with the president, Frank Giordero, of his company, his executive chef, Robin, and I don't know who was taking care of the restaurant. And he was so happy to see me, and I didn't know who he was. I said, who's this little boy? Anyway, but you see, the reputation, the legend goes on. So I was at Universal Studios with Grandma, and we decided to go to Emeralds. And we sit down. We didn't have a reservation. We were there when they opened, so it was no problem. And we sit down, the manager comes over in 5 minutes and says, I'm sorry, Mr. Ross, I had no idea who you were. We're going to move your table. I said, no, I'm fine here. And I probably usually, when people say that to me, I usually say, well, if they say, we know who you are, I said, well, I served my time in jail. And I try to make a joke out of it, because they really don't know who I am. So anyway, he said, we didn't know who you were, and we're going to change your table. So I said, fine. And they put me in the window. I guess if you're going to be assassinated, they can shoot you through the window. I guess he wanted people at Universal to see I was there, so he put me in a window. And they wouldn't give me a menu, and the chef made everything perfect, and they wouldn't let me order, and they made all these appetizers, and no check. I said, no. Finish?
No, just wrap it up.
I said, no. So what we're going to get to is that we started a life. We haven't got to Disney. We haven't moved to Florida. We got a lot of Disney in. What we're trying to say is that whatever created our business helped create our share and our value to Disney executives and our friendship, or mentoring, or meeting people at the bowling alley who write you letters, and every restaurant wants you to eat there, and they invite you to their grand openings, and all of this is going on from this little cab driver in New York who everyone's his friend. Okay, we're in 1982. Dave Friedland's fired. We have 120 people working in New York. We've got 15 button machines going. We've got pen printing presses. We're basically in the button, pen, and screening business, but for the new pack job, or the ASI job, they take 85% of our production, because we're only selling political, and we don't have a fire company, we don't have a law enforcement company. We sell books. We're the only one in the industry really with books. We had a book line. Today there's 500 books in the industry. In those days it was only us. But everyone learns. They learn. They learn from us. And by the way, teaching. Very, very, very important aspect. Your grandfather, your father, maybe they'll be watching it, your great-grandfather, which is me, and maybe they'll be watching it, your great-great-great-grandfather, spent his life teaching. I touched this before, but everything we do in business, let me just turn my head, is teaching. We teach kids and adults, don't move that, to be safe. We teach them to be safe on the bicycles. We teach them to be fire safe. We teach them to be safe from drugs. We teach them to be safe in cars. Safe. Be safe. Our books. I Want You Alert. That's for Homeland Security. These are, of course, brochures. I don't open each one, but be safe. You see that? Be safe. And everything we pretty much do for law enforcement, and the fire departments, which are three of our companies, law enforcement's one, is teaching kids to be safe. Don't light candles, don't speed, respect the police, don't use drugs, don't smoke. But that's in business. At Disney, I taught Barry. I was teaching. if I wasn't teaching direct, I was giving them material to learn. It was like the head of Epcot was taken on a tour, a walking tour, I think by Joan London on the, whatever it was, the 25th anniversary of Disney. And after the walking tour was over, he said to me, "Thank heavens I had all your material, because I knew what to say." Because he wasn't there at the opening of Epcot like I was. He didn't have the library of material, so I was able to teach him and give him the material. So this has been, and the same thing with the family. I think Stephen knows and Tricia knows. That's all I do. Grandma's going to sit down right there in the corner quietly, walk around the back. It's okay, we're ad-libbing. And so teaching, even I go to a restaurant, for some reason I'm teaching the servers, I'm teaching the manager. And that basically, I don't know, maybe I should have been a preacher or a rabbi to teach the flocks. But I spent my life teaching, designing products to teach. I have other companies that don't, like political merchandise and so on. But it was a strange combination because nobody has the brochures in our industry like we do, and the books, and we established these things. Other people now have copied, but it's fine. So we're back into 1982, and I mentioned before, we teach our employees. We don't go out in the market and say, "Give me a manager." We find someone in the company and we promote them and teach them to be a manager or teach them to run a department. We don't have anybody in our company in New York from the outside. They all started within and worked themselves. We taught them to be printers. We teach them to be computer operators and so forth. So, and that's partly due to the fact that Liberty, New York doesn't have a large population of people we can draw on to do these things. So we're in 1982, and I go back to New York. Allison, as I say, is on 9th Court. We're living in the Oaks. The business at that point, 1982, is still on the beach. Still on the beach. We don't move our office here, I don't think, until 83. I think we had a 3-year lease on the beach, and then we come out here. Grandma and Al is traveling from Coral Springs down to the ocean almost every morning and back. Now I've got to go to New York. I'm trying to because I don't have any winter clothes left. I think I go out. We had a young lady working at home. Her name was Turner. Eileen Turner. She had a master's degree in psychology. She was our housekeeper. I helped her go through college in a way by paying for her. And also Rita, we paid very well, and she went through college and did very well. So we had a lot of housekeepers and au pairs and people. We always helped them when we could. Anyway, so I go down to Miami, I buy some clothes, a winter coat, or this and that. And I have to get to New York. And I fly to New York, and I think that was a time they wouldn't let me in the factory. At night, I arrived at night and they didn't know who I was. Because I'd been gone for 5 years, the night crew didn't know me. Anyway, I find the place really needs a lot of work. The 5 years I was gone, 77, 89, 88, it needs work. The people were treated pretty miserably by Dave Friedland. We made a lot of money, but he wasn't the good, kind, nice boss. And we really, really did not want to depend on the new pack jobber. We wanted to open other companies to use some of the capacity. Now, I had asked Dave Friedland to buy a building, one building here, one building. He never would buy it. Another reason I fired him, we wanted to computerize. Our offices weren't computerized. He always rejected the idea because it wasn't from his era. He didn't know about computers. So now we had to buy computers. Our art department was all, there were no computers in those days. They set type by wheels and by this and by, that's why we had 120 people. And wages weren't high in those days. I think you hired someone for the art department for $88 a week. I think Sandy started at $88 a week. That was $2.20 an hour minimum wage. That was the wage. And I got back and I realized that we have a lot to do. So it was 83 when I got back. I got back in April of 83. The first thing I did was I bought a building. It was the old A&P building, and some company called Mayfair Trading was in there on a lease. They had offered so much, I doubled the offer they made. I got the building because it was empty, they were there. And we were going to open up, see, we had a lot of button business. We were selling millions of buttons. And our whole button printing department was in a little space under with 7-foot ceilings. We had 3 presses in there. I don't know who can work in there. I mean, it was just impossible. So I was going to open this building and make a real print shop out of it, like you've seen, with 15 presses. And I did it. 83, I bought the building. 84, their lease was up and I threw them out. Always problems. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to put it back. They stole the conveyor belt. Always things. Business is not, you come in the morning and you go home at night and it's the same from morning till night. If you're a landlord, there's tenant problems. So I'm going to go back to that in a moment. And will you remind me, I had a building here in Florida with tenants that snuck out during the night. Very rich company, but they snuck out during the night. Big Chicago corporation. I rented to a large electronic company. I used to have to call them 6 times a month to get my rent. I'm talking about a big national company. Your mother will tell you the name. We're talking about a billion-dollar corporation, and I had to call for my rent. So these things, and we had tenants. Okay. In fact, when we bought the buildings in Liberty, the old buildings, we had the school buses parked in one of the buildings. We had to ask them to leave. So business is not easy. It's hard. It's tough. It's you worry about your employees. You worry about your suppliers. You worry about tenants if you're a landlord. And if you're a renter, you got a problem with your landlord. Anyway, so here we are. I buy this building in 1983. Can't use it. The man's in there. The company's in there. They don't know where to go. They end up going bankrupt. It was an old family company. I had to sue them for stealing the conveyor belt and for this, and then we finally collected money and collected a new conveyor belt they had to put back. And the reason they settled was the original lease was signed by their mother and father, and I was going to take their house away because I'm a rotten person. But they were mutilating my building. But it shows you a point. They offered half what the building was worth. Half. The building's worth $600,000-700,000, but it wasn't new. And I offered $220,000. They offered $100,000. They ended up paying me and the lawyers maybe $65,000 for the damn. They could have given the guy $200,000 and stayed in business, but they really wanted to take the owner over the coals. They thought no one else would want it. And when they saw me come looking at it, they said, "Oh, you don't want this building, it's falling down." Well, it fell down at my pocket. So they were Mayfair Trading, and they went out of business after 30, 40 years because they weren't going to be fair and buy it. I'm happy I bought the building. It's where we have the warehouse put up now, and it's a building that if I wanted to put it up today, it would cost me $800,000 minimum, $900,000. Anyway, so I got this building, and we're operating in Florida successfully, and we come back and forth. We're not staying in Liberty. We're traveling back and forth. We came down for the winter, and we're making plans on utilizing the building. But, what are we going to do with it? Well, we're going to put in printing presses, and so in April or so of '84, they're out. They're out. And we start renovating. We hire about 20 people to renovate the building, tear out it was an A&P. The coolers, the walk-in refrigerators were all there. And we tear it all out, and we call in the Heidelberg company, and we buy 8 one-color presses and a 4-color press. And we give them an order for about $550,000. And we buy a cutting machine, and we still don't know what we're going to do with this, but we're selling a lot of buttons, and we need those presses. But like everything else in life, the button business stops. People start going to roll labels, this and that. So we have to figure, it isn't just we have to figure that we're going to do something. So we start using the printing presses to make free memo pads, so whoever buys our pens, we can give them free memo pads, inducing pen business. I had a fire book for years, of fire safety, which I sold to two jobbers, Sunset and Hines. And I had a fire growth chart. And it was 1984. And I said, you know, I can use this equipment to make fire products. So I made a bookmark for fire. And I called up Sunset and I said, well, he's our main fire customer. I got a bookmark that I think you can sell. He said, no, I got my own bookmark. I said to myself, well, thank you. Because if you're going to pick and choose my products, I'll go into the business myself. The guy Hines in Florida, he said to me, if you don't give me my book, a new book for me and no one else can have it, I'll do my own book. I said, good for you. Not only will I not give you the old book, I won't sell you, but so I'll sue you because he was stealing the art from our book. So we sued him. It cost him $40,000. It cost me $40,000 too. Now we're going into the fire business. And we say, wait a minute. We have this character on the top of the growth chart. We've had that growth chart for 8-10 years maybe. What am I going to call him? I'm going to do a character. And I remembered one of the beer companies. In fact, I just heard the other day on television, yesterday. They were the beer with gusto. And there was a song 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the word gusto. And the beer company, before they came out saying it's the beer with gusto, did a survey. And the only word that could describe something that didn't get any negative, they would test this word and 20% would feel negative. It was a word that only gave a positive. And I said, gusto. How about Fireman Gus? Now the artist's name was Gus, but it had nothing to do with him. It had to do with gusto. I called in Gus, who did the original. I bought out a company he had, and I ended up, I can't go into every detail. He had sold artwork. He sold me the company and the artwork of another company, but the Middletown government thought they had the right to it. And I told them they can't run it in the newspaper anymore. You're always fighting somebody. They're either stealing your art. It's not a matter of, oh, I own it, so I own it. Other people think they own it. We had the case, we got a call from a major book publisher 2 years ago, 3 years ago. What right do we have to infringe on their character that they have a book, and the book is got the bank, Mr. Dollar Bill. And we looked, Mr. Dollar Bill, The book was published 3 years ago. My Mr. Dollar Bill was published 15 years ago. They stole it from me, the writer. So they dropped, and I wasn't going to sue them. Not important. It was a different market. But they were ready to sue me, and the artist and the writer who did it stole ours. So people are plagiarizing. So you're always suing, but I don't sue anymore, but you're always trying to protect your property. You work hard to develop it, people want to steal it. We just had someone who stole our catalog down in West Virginia a year or two ago, last year. And we sued them, and we just got them to stop and collected $5,000. She said her husband had cancer, who knows what. But they're always stealing. And I don't want to be paranoid, but they're always stealing. I do the artwork, they steal it. So anyway, here we are, back in 83, 84, and we have this equipment, but we don't have the business for it. Because I had spent $200,000 for the building, another $100,000 to renovate it, $550,000 for the equipment from Heidelberg, $850,000, and another $150,000 for miscellaneous equipment and so on. So I had $1 million out, and so we went to work and built a fire company. Smartest thing I ever did. The fire company boomed. We opened one, we opened two, 300 products. But we still had a lot of work to do in New York. And I'm trying to put this into context of the fire business started in 1984. So we're 20 years now. Now the 20 years just wasn't we started a fire business and let's call it quits. You have to develop product. Some products work, some products don't. You have to develop catalogs. Now, all the time this is going on, we're losing our new pack business because the jobber doesn't like us selling direct, and we're doing so well over here in fire, we really don't need their business with smaller markups because they get a big discount because they're jobbers and they resell it. We're doing very well. And, but we still have an antiquated operation. Pre-press needs to be computerized. And I have gotten now to 1985. Oh, forgot a very important factor. There was a wedding. And the wedding was your mother. She got married. And she got married in 1984. 1984. Because I remember by 1985, I was stopping my travel to New York and back, and she was going up and taking over the management on a revolving basis. A week up there, come back, 2 months later, 2 weeks, and come back. But she was spending the time in 85, 6, and 7. You were born in 88, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have this period now where from 85, because I remember we went to a wedding, Jeff's wedding. She came in from New York, from Florida. We went to the wedding. I came from Liberty. I came back to Florida. She went back up to Liberty. And pretty much 85 was when I stopped going to New York, till 94. So now the next period was 9 years. And in those 9 years, who was running New York? Well, Dottie Moylan was there. Ira Frankel emerged from pre-press as a management person. We had a man, an elderly gentleman from Europe, who set up all the die cutting and the die cutting presses. He was an expert. And we brought in Stanley Cohn, who didn't last very long. And we were learning to be a lithography company, printers. We had 8 presses, and the color is 9. We had book presses, we had pen presses. We were a very well functioning machine. And there wasn't much in the business that was going wrong. We didn't owe any money by 1990 on any of the equipment, and everything was free and clear. And in that time, we're not going back to Disney information, but in that time, we were living our life at Disney, a lot. And we were living our life in Florida, a lot. And we were establishing a family icon in Orlando and here. And we didn't get born yet because we didn't get up to 1988. But I guess we're having, I'm trying to think of us at the Oaks. It was, I guess I always say, nice life. Tricia was born in 86. She's 2 years older than you?
Mm-hmm.
She was born in 85. What?
Born in
85. And I can't think of any major, and I could be wrong, I'll wake up tonight and try to figure, but I can't think of any major problems in New York. Florida was doing well. Oh, we moved from there, we came to Coral Springs, we rented where we are. We're there now 23 years in that location. We established offices. Oh yes, we opened Ohio. We didn't get to 88 yet. Some big competition comes up in Illinois, knocks the socks off us. We didn't know he was there on a national level. Giving away merchandise. I mean, if we were $200, he was $120. And we lost a lot of business, no? We lost a lot of business. And so we decided to open Ohio and open a discount company. No, we opened Ohio first, I'm sorry. We opened Ohio in about early 80s, 84, 85. And it was very successful. Helen Carter had a sister-in-law out there. She became a manager. Helen Carter went out to open it. I've never been in Ohio. And it was successful. We had a political company out there, and for a short while we had a fire company. And we let her go when she would interview people for jobs, and she was a nice lady, but she wasn't too bright. And we hear that she interviewed a girl for a job, and before the interview was over, made a date with the girl's father, because she found out the father was single. And the girl walked out of the office, we heard from another girl there, saying, "Hello, okay, Mom, I'll be to work Monday." She already got herself married in 2 hours of interviewing. We said, time for this young lady to leave us. So we let her go, and Joy came in, and Joy's been there for 15 years. So there's always something happening. And we're going to be going through, I don't know how much more time we have on this reel.
Yeah, about a half an hour.
Okay. And we're going to be going through the Dottie Moylan leaving us, and Franco, and Walter Moylan, and all those years. You got to remember, we're in Florida. They're doing what they want up there to some extent. Allison's not going up from 1990 till for the next 5-6 years. Allison didn't go to New York. I didn't go to New York, and we'll get into all that later. But the business was good. We always had the concept. I mentioned this before. If you have many companies, all small, and one doesn't do well, it gives you time to build another. There was always something in the wings. When we were in the Ross pen business mailing, and only Ross, we said, well, let's open the new pack, so if Ross doesn't do well, we'll have new pack. So we had Ross and new pack. And we said, well, if Ross and new pack and there's a problem, let's have Votes Unlimited. So if there's a problem in Ross, Votes Unlimited and new pack will hold up the company while we rebuild with Fire. So we have the fire company. Well, if something's wrong with the fire company, let's get it. We had a Christmas business, Christmas books, Christmas candy. Not big, but it brought it in. Then we said, okay, NewPac isn't going to be doing so well. We want to get rid of it. Let's open a law enforcement business. You see, it's not a matter of saying, let's wait until something is, because business, as I said, doesn't run, the business I had 40 years ago wouldn't hold us 1 minute in this life today. So you always almost have to be ready with the next company, the next promotional move, the next arrow point. Businesses run on a road, but every 5, 10, 15 years you may come to an intersection. Well, first of all, you got to see the intersection ahead. You can't hit the intersection and say, oh my God, I'm in an intersection, what do I do? And then you got to pick roads. Do I go this road or that road? If you pick this road, you may have a tough time. You may not make it. So you got to think hard. I'll take this road. It'll be rough, but I got to take this road. So a business is not a smooth ride. It's intersections, it's planning ahead, thinking ahead. Right now, we have a plan for the next 10 years. We have a solid, printed out plan for the next 10 years. As for products, finances, everything. We used to do 5 years, but we decided to do a 10-year plan. And I'd say we'll stick to it 90%. It's an overall picture. It's called a model of a business. See, for the students who are studying business, a business has a model. It's like if you're building an airplane, you have to know that you got wings and you got this, but all of a sudden, if you're building a rocket ship, you need a new model. Well, the business has a model, and the model that was good for the first 10 years ain't good for the second 10 years, etc. And the model that was so wonderful for the last 10 and the 10 before, we need a new model for the next 10 years. So you start remodeling. Doesn't mean you just remodel the buildings. You think of new products, new marketing, new costs, new structures. Because if you think you're going to run a company next year like you ran it 20 years ago, you're not going to succeed. You see, probably everyone's heard this from me that knows me. You do not study success. The problem with schools that teach business is they teach the kids about IBM and they teach the kids about Microsoft. And they teach, oh, look at the wonderful thing that they did at General Electric. No. The only thing I studied was failure. I studied every bankruptcy I could study. I studied companies going out. I studied statistics on failure. Because failure is the rule and success is the exception. And if you want to stay in business, you have to know the rule. And the rule is failure. 9 out of 10 businesses fail. 9 out of 10 businesses do not last past 9 years. 50% go out in 2 years. 5 years, most of them are gone. So what's the sense of studying IBM or Microsoft or even Bloomingdale's? Because those are the successes. And if you try to copy them, you may make it, you may not, but I doubt it. But if you avoid the failures of the millions of businesses that fail, by the way, there are 10 million small businesses in America today. 10 million. Very possibly, 20 years from now, 9 million of those will be gone, and another 9 million will start up. And the reason is, there's 100 reasons. They didn't start with enough money. They didn't understand the business. They became drunkards. They became gamblers. Their wife shot them for running around. There's so many reasons. I used to make a chart of 20 reasons why we didn't have to put our competitors out of business, because there are 20 reasons they can put themselves out. So you study failure, and you study failure, and then you avoid, or you try to avoid, those things that make failure. And there's three basic reasons for failing in business, of course, are people go into new businesses undercapitalized. People go into business not really knowing the business. They think they know it. They were a plumber working for John Doe, and now they're going to open up the International Plumbing Company, and they're going to put plumbing in Saudi Arabia. You know, and the third reason is a very simple reason: ego. Ego. People build big buildings, fancy buildings, that don't produce anything for the bottom line, just that the president likes to see his name in big buildings. We don't even have our name on the office in Florida. We don't have our name on the big building in Florida. 23 years. We don't care if they know we're there or not. We're a mail order company. We just put our name on the New York factory in the last year. 40 years we didn't have our name up there. We're fixing it all up because Stephen didn't like what it looked like years ago. Said it looks like barns falling down. So we spent $1 million to fix it up. But the point is this: ego. If you think you're smart, you'll fail. Because smart people make stupid mistakes. Stupid people think things out 100 times or 1,000 times before they make a move. And they research and they this, oh, I'm so stupid, let me look further and deeper, and they succeed. And really the smart one. I told a story the other day about Dave Freeland's son, who came to Florida at 16. I will repeat it now because we did it before. He was interested in real estate, he was interested in this, and I said, boy, this guy has a future. He went back home, grew up, went to college, opened up 3 video stores and a liquor store, and didn't know what he was doing, bought a big house, went bankrupt, lost them all, now in New York doing something, I don't know what. He was too smart. He was too smart. Maybe he thought, Blockbuster wasn't there, or who knows what. But it's not easy. You open up the doors of a business today, you're going to go bankrupt, or you're going to fail. That's the rule. 9 years from now, you're going to be out of business. That's the rule. You want to break the rule? Then you've got to make it work. 7 days a week, 100 hours a week, every day. That's it. You've got to be an observer of life, an observer of people, and understand what in our business, what do they want in middle America? Like right now, I'm telling them, I don't like the characters in our brochures or our books. We don't have enough minorities. We don't have enough people with Spanish names to sell our merchandise in Texas. In Texas, 3 out of every 4 candidates are Hispanic now. So, and I keep fighting with Gus. Gus, where's the Chinese children in the brochures? You see, they're still working, but somebody has to direct. So we're slowly changing. But if you're out on the golf course, well, you're not watching what's going on in the middle America. You got enough women firefighters in the book. Well, you put a mask over their head. You say they're women, but they really were men. But think about it. 40 years ago, I could put out a catalog and without Hispanic names, because no one Hispanic was running. I can't sell in Texas now, so they can't do these things overnight. But you have to be careful. And then you have to, and why am I saying these things? Because this is a lesson I got to teach. You got to follow the rules of OSHA, the Occupational Safety Hazard Administration. We got now oil tanks. It's costing me $100,000 to dig up oil tanks that were left by A&P and other things and remove inks. You got to do it. If you have asbestos, you can't have it. So you got to do the things that bring on safety and not hide them and go to jail. So you got to work every minute. You got to review everything you do. And it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. That's why I want to be 75. I've done it all my life. Now it's time for other people to do it. So anyway, we haven't done anything today. We've gotten to Allison getting married, and the hardships of a business. And I did this before, and I'll say it again because it's so important. They want to put us out of business. There's 18,000 jobbers out there who sell the same things we sell. They may not sell our brochures, but they sell books for someone else. They want me out of business. They want my customers. And there are 30 people in the mail order business, the same as us, in police and in fire. They want me dead. Everybody who competes in a market wants to kill their competitors. General Motors would like to kill Ford. And Sony, well, Disney wants to kill Universal. Michael Eisner would love to blow up Universal tomorrow, but he'd go to jail. So he tries to blow them up by taking away their business. So you're fighting the competitors. You're fighting your employees, because they have their own agenda. And sometimes you're fighting the government, because they have their own agenda, with rules and laws and taxes. You may be fighting the community, who may not like this or that. And in the end, you hope to win. Well, we've won for 44 years. And that is the only thing we can say. And we hope to win for another 44 years. But without the lessons of the early 44 years, let's say this, I probably spent $5 million on failures. I would say roughly, maybe $10 million. In 44 years, I may have spent $10 million on things that were stupid and I failed at. Well, luckily, I was able to afford it and make it up on other things. But you don't succeed at everything. You just got to make sure that you don't take the money to Las Vegas and put it down on a wheel and say goodbye, win or lose. If you're investing in a new project, you got to make absolutely sure that even if you fail, you're not going to go out of business, that it didn't break you, because this is what happens in business. Guy's doing well, he has 2 stores, and he says, oh, I'll open 9 more. Well, he's out of business. Maybe if he opened 1 more, he had a chance. But people like to jump. They like to jump from 1 to 100, from 100 to 1,000, and it doesn't work. You got to move slowly, and you got to think it out, or not move at all sometimes. So I'm really getting dry. I don't know where we're up to now.
41 minutes.
41, I still have about 19 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to just take it down, and I'll come back for a few minutes. All right, we're back. We will wind down in about 15 minutes, Stephen. Okay. I'm going to jump ahead till today. I'm going to show pictures of the plant, how it exists today. And I mentioned before, we have 6 buildings and a home in New York. They're all under renovation. Stephen went up there many years ago and said, Grandpa, your buildings look like barns that are going to fall down. Well, he was right. It was a shame. And we have spent, Mike has worked with the crew, and we've renovated. We're going to continue to renovate insides, outsides. We have spent years now, it was about 5 years, renovating, fixing, fencing in, and this, I'm putting up a new warehouse in 96, this was way back, but we'll get to this later. This is 96, okay? Mm-hmm. And that warehouse was put up. What we're doing now is, these are buildings, signage is going up. Can you see that, Stephen? Mm-hmm. Signage is going up. We're changing the sign on the old A&P building. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. And let me see what we have. Oh, this is the courtyard between building 3 and 1. Building 1 has not been renovated yet. I don't know if you can see it. Is it shaking a lot?
Nope.
Okay. Building 1, building 3 has. And I just want to go here a little more. And they're really putting together a much greater, here's the other side of building 3. Let me get a better shaking on this. Building 3, can you see it? Mm-hmm. Okay. And this is building 1, where the signage just went up on one side. We're on top of a hill in there, and you can see it from all over town. And so that's it. Stephen created the must repair, Grandpa. And Winnie the Pooh is on my clock. 1, 2, no, the wrong time. Okay. So I'm going to go back, but I just want to let you know that the years, even the buildings get redone. Like every building, if you go to a restaurant or you go to a Disney hotel, it has to be renovated. And it takes money. It takes cash. Businesses are not for the owners. A business has to have profit to create new products. It has to have profit to renovate, profit to buy new equipment, profit to pay taxes. A business with no profit is of no value to the employees. It's of no value to the owners. It's of no value to the community. It's of no value to your suppliers. Business must have a profit. You don't go 44 years without having to put back millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And you continue. You come up with new products, some work, some don't. You got to carry inventory. You have to have money to carry accounts receivable of your customers. So there are so many things that you have to know in a business. A business is made up of sales, so you got to be a salesman. Business is made up of manufacturing, so you got to understand the manufacturing process. In our case, it's horrible because we got buttons and pens and books and silk screening and lithography. We have every form of printing. We have 23, 4, 5 printing presses. So, and a printer is basically a printer. They're not manufacturing pens, and they're not doing the things we're doing, and they don't have a mail room for ourselves, and they don't have their own creative art department, and they don't have their own sales force and their catalogs. You see, unfortunately or fortunate, we do it all. Maybe that's why we succeeded. We did it all. But it's hard to run a company where you do it all, because you've got to run a mailroom, you got to run a factory, you got to run a sales division, a creative division, a financial division. Well, it's got to be done. Allison and I, with the help of some managers, have been doing it. But you can't do it alone. So we have to fill in the blanks. And we have a plan. We have a plan for the next company rising. Won't be easy. It'll be maybe costly, but it's going to be. Because as Allison said and I said, this company was tailored for me, for my talents, my ego, and possibly my negatives. But Allison's a different person. She may not be able to create brochures or books, and she may have to stick with other situations to create sales. We may have to hire a new pack sales manager, which you're going to get to this later on. But it has to change. See, we always said, we'll go into that later. So we're back, and we're going to phase this down now. Where were we? We were back in 80. You're not born yet, Stephen. You notice how we keep putting this off?
Yeah.
Stephen's not born yet.
No.
Okay, it was 88. Tricia was born in 5 minutes?
85.
Okay, Tricia was born in 85. I don't know what he's doing to the machine.
Okay.
Don't turn it off.
I'm not turning it off.
Okay. And we're pretty much established that we're in Florida. We're going to Disney. And by the way, even though I keep mentioning Disney, Disney was a very important part of our life from the 80s and 90s and up until the millennium and now. I mean, it's hard to picture the Ross family in Florida without that aspect of life. Is someone coming? Okay, we're going to phase down. It's okay. They're coming to take Stephen away. His mother's at the door. And I'm going to phase this out till the next time we meet Stephen. And remember where we are. What year?
88.
No, we didn't get to 88 yet. Was Tricia born? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to get to Stephen being born very shortly. Thank you.